The deep debt, parents as living Buddhas. Have you ever heard the saying, "Your parents are like living Buddhas in your life"? It's a phrase that can sound poetic at first, but if you sit with it for just a moment, you might begin to feel the weight of its truth. Think about it. Before you even opened your eyes to this world, someone carried you within their own body. Someone felt every shift, every kick, every discomfort, and yet chose to continue. Someone went through pain beyond words just to give you a chance to take your first breath. That is not just biology. That is sacrifice. That is love in its rawest form. The Buddha once said, "The debt we owe to our parents is deeper than the ocean and higher than the mountains." It's not a metaphor to be taken lightly. It is a reminder that every breath we take has roots in the silent labor of those who came before us. And yet, in the busyness of modern life, how often do we forget? We are caught up in work, bills, social media, ambitions, and distractions. Days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and somewhere along the way, the quiet truth slips out of sight. We owe our very existence, our body, our chance to dream, to two people who carried us when we could not even lift our own head. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you truly looked into your parents' eyes and saw the years etched into their faces? The wrinkles, the silver strands of hair, the tiredness that comes not just from age, but from decades of giving. Giving more than they had, giving even when it hurt, giving without keeping score. I remember a story I once heard from a Buddhist teacher. A young monk asked, "Master, how can I repay my parents for everything they have done for me?" The teacher simply smiled and said, "You cannot. Their gift is too vast. But you can honor it. You can bow before it. And you can live in such a way that their sacrifices are not wasted." That response struck me deeply, because it shifts the focus. It's not about balancing a debt sheet, but about awakening to gratitude. And maybe that's where it all begins, with awareness. Gratitude is not just saying thank you. Gratitude is pausing long enough to see the reality of what has been given to you. Gratitude is looking at your own life and realizing, I stand here today, not alone, but carried on the shoulders of those who gave me everything they could. Some of us may have complicated relationships with our parents. Perhaps they weren't perfect. Perhaps there was pain, misunderstanding, or even absence. But even then, the undeniable truth remains. Without them, you would not be here. The gift of life itself came through them. And recognizing that does not erase the difficulties. It simply honors the root of your existence. Imagine this. If every time you saw your parents, you could see them as living Buddhas, as beings who gave you life, who bore suffering so you could walk this earth, how differently would you treat them? Would you speak more gently? Would you listen with more patience? Would you set aside your phone and simply be present with them for a while? There is a Buddhist teaching that says, caring for your parents is the highest form of merit. That means every small act, a meal cooked, a hand held, a visit made, a kind word spoken, is not just a duty, but a spiritual practice. It is a way of aligning your life with compassion, with respect, with the great law of gratitude. We live in a world that often celebrates independence, being self-made, standing on our own. But true wisdom reminds us that no one stands alone. Behind each of us is a mother's care, a father's effort, and countless unseen sacrifices. To forget that is to forget the soil in which we grow. To remember it is to root ourselves in humility. So I invite you to pause today. Just pause. Think of your parents. If they are still alive, perhaps give them a call, not out of obligation, but out of recognition. Tell them something simple. I see you. I thank you. If they have passed on, take a moment of silence. Light a candle. Whisper gratitude into the air. Because whether here or gone, that bond, that debt of life, remains. And here's a thought. Maybe the greatest offering we can give is not just words or gifts, but living our lives with integrity. Living with kindness. Living with purpose. When we walk a path of compassion and wisdom, we honor the very people who made our first steps possible. So yes, caring for parents is not just a responsibility. It is a blessing. It is a chance to step into the deepest practice of gratitude. And gratitude, in the Buddhist path, is the seed of awakening. As we close this part, I want to leave you with a gentle reflection. What is one small thing you can do this week to show gratitude to your parents? Not in a grand way, but in a simple, human way. Because recognition is the first step. And once we recognize, we can act. In the next part of this series, we'll explore how, not in grand gestures, but in the small daily actions, we can begin to repay this vast debt of love. actions that might seem ordinary, but in truth are sacred offerings of the heart. Filial piety, the root of all blessings. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to walk through life with a certain light around them? Opportunities open up, they're surrounded by support, and even in hard times, they seem to land on their feet. Is it luck? Is it destiny? Or is there something deeper at play? In Buddhist wisdom, there is a teaching that might surprise you. Those who practice filial piety, honoring and caring for their parents, often attract unseen blessings into their lives. It's not superstition. It's not about magic. It's about the law of cause and effect. The Buddha taught that filial devotion is the very root of all virtues. In other words, everything good, compassion, patience, generosity, wisdom, begins with how we treat the ones who gave us life. Let's think about this more deeply. If you can show kindness and respect to the very people who raised you, who witnessed your flaws, who tested your patience, who sometimes misunderstood you, then you are training the heart to love unconditionally. And when your heart learns unconditional love, that love naturally flows outwards to everyone else. From this soil, blessings grow. You may have noticed this in your own life. People who care for their parents often have a kind of softness about them. They carry patience, humility, and a groundedness that others can feel. They are not easily shaken. And because they live in alignment with gratitude, the universe, in its mysterious way, seems to return that gratitude back to them. Here's something worth reflecting on. In the Buddhist sutras, it is said that even the gods watch over those who honor their parents. Now, you don't have to believe in gods to understand this teaching. Think of it this way. When you treat your parents with reverence, you're aligning yourself with the natural order of life. You're in harmony with the law of gratitude, and harmony always attracts support. Just as a tree that sinks its roots deep into the soil receives more nourishment, a person who sinks their roots into gratitude receives more unseen strength. And the blessings don't stop with us. Filial piety plants seeds for the generations that follow. When children see their parents caring for grandparents, they absorb that behavior without words. They learn that love doesn't end when someone becomes old and frail. They learn that dignity doesn't expire with age. In this way, honoring your parents is not just an act of love for them, it's a gift for your children and your grandchildren. It's teaching by example, passing down a tradition of compassion and respect. I once met a man who told me a story that has stayed with me for years. He grew up watching his father take care of his grandmother, every morning, preparing her tea, every evening, massaging her tired legs, speaking to her gently even when she repeated the same stories again and again. As a child, he didn't think much of it. But when his father grew old and frail, he found himself doing the exact same things, without being asked. It wasn't even a decision, he said. It was just natural, because I had already seen what love looks like. That's the invisible inheritance we leave behind. Not wealth, not possessions, but the culture of love. Maybe you've seen the opposite too. Families where elders are neglected, dismissed, or treated as a burden. What happens there? Resentment grows. Hearts harden. And often, that cycle repeats itself. The way we treat our parents becomes the way the next generation will treat us. It's sobering, isn't it? So when the Buddha said, filial piety is the root of all blessings, it wasn't just a moral instruction. It was practical wisdom. To honor our parents is to align ourselves with gratitude, to strengthen family bonds, to plant seeds of kindness for generations to come. And that naturally leads to more blessings, because love multiplies when it is practiced. But let's be honest here. It's not always easy. Parents are human. They may have flaws, they may have made mistakes, and sometimes, caring for them can feel heavy. So how do we practice filial piety in those moments? Maybe it begins not with perfection, but with effort. Not with grand gestures, but with small consistencies. A phone call. A meal together. Listening without rushing. Speaking without irritation. It's in these ordinary acts that extraordinary blessings grow. If you find yourself resisting, if old wounds surface, maybe shift the perspective. Can I care for them, not because they are perfect, but because I am choosing to be whole? This shift transforms filial piety from an obligation into a spiritual practice. It becomes less about what they deserve and more about who you want to become. The truth is, when we take care of our parents, we are not only repaying the past, we are also investing in our own future. We are training our hearts to be patient, compassionate, and humble. And those qualities don't just bless our parents, they bless our careers, our friendships, our marriages, and every interaction we have. That's why it is said that filial piety is not only a personal virtue, but the foundation of all other virtues. So let me ask you, when you look at your life, are you nurturing the root, or are you only decorating the branches? Because no matter how beautiful a tree's leaves are, if its roots are weak, it cannot last. In the same way, if we neglect our roots, our parents, our lineage, our gratitude, then no amount of success or possessions can bring lasting peace. Caring for our parents is not about perfection. It is about presence. It is about planting seeds that will bear fruit long after we are gone. And those seeds, invisible though they may be, grow into blessings that shape not only our lives, but the lives of generations. So the next time you wonder why some people seem blessed, ask yourself this: are they carrying the fragrance of gratitude? Because gratitude, expressed through filial piety, truly is the soil in which all other virtues bloom. And that is why, when we honor our parents, we are not only showing love, we are building a foundation for blessings that ripple far beyond us. In the next part of this series, we will dive deeper into this idea, how caring for parents is not only a way to honor them, but also a powerful path of spiritual practice, a form of meditation in everyday life. Caring for parents is also a spiritual practice. Do you think you have to go to a temple or a monastery to practice spirituality? Many people imagine spiritual practice as something distant, sitting in silence under a Bodhi tree, chanting in a sacred hall, or walking barefoot on holy ground. But the truth is, some of the deepest spiritual practices can happen right inside your own home, in the ordinary moments of daily life. The Buddha once said that caring for one's parents is itself a form of noble practice. It is not lesser, not secondary, but equal in merit to meditation, prayer, or chanting. Think about that for a moment. Every time you prepare a meal for your parents, every time you listen to their stories with patience, every time you speak to them with kindness, you are not just being a good child. You are walking the path of mindfulness. You are cultivating compassion. You are practicing. This changes everything, doesn't it? It means that the sacred is not reserved for temples and rituals. The sacred can be found in the way you pour your mother a cup of tea, or in how you help your father put on his shoes. It can be in the soft tone of your voice when you calm their worries. Each act of care becomes like a prayer. Each gesture becomes a meditation. And perhaps this is where many of us get spirituality wrong. We think it's about escaping daily life, when in fact, it's about transforming daily life. Spirituality is not running away from the ordinary, but waking up to its depth. The Buddha's wisdom reminds us that you don't need incense, statues, or distant journeys to practice. You need awareness. You need love. You need presence. And what better place to develop those qualities than in caring for the very people who gave you life? Let me share a story. A young man once asked a monk, "Master, I want to practice deeply. Should I travel to the mountains? Should I retreat into silence?" The monk looked at him and asked, "Do your parents still live?" The young man nodded. The monk replied, "Then your temple is right there, in your home. Serve them. Love them. That is your retreat." I found that story both humbling and liberating. It tells us that we don't need to look far. Spiritual growth doesn't require dramatic steps. It requires sincerity. And sincerity can be lived in the small, ordinary interactions with our parents. Here's a thought. When you sit in meditation, what are you really doing? You are training your mind to be present, to be compassionate, to let go of irritation, to soften judgment. And what better training ground is there than with your parents? They may test your patience, repeat things, move slower than you like, or hold views different from yours. In those moments, you are given a chance to practice patience, compassion, and humility. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to strengthen your spiritual heart. Of course, this doesn't mean it is always easy. In fact, that's why it's powerful. Anyone can feel peaceful in a quiet temple. But to remain peaceful while caring for aging parents, to keep a gentle heart even when they are difficult, that is advanced practice. That is real meditation in motion. Let's be honest, many people spend years seeking enlightenment in distant places, yet neglect the suffering right in front of them. Isn't it ironic? The Buddha reminds us that true practice is not just about our own liberation, but about compassion in action. When you care for your parents, you are practicing the Bodhisattva path, the path of one who vows to serve and uplift others. And who better to serve than the ones who once carried you in their arms? So maybe we need to redefine what spiritual success means. It's not how many scriptures you can recite, or how many hours you spend meditating. It's how much love you bring into your daily life. It's how gently you speak when someone is fragile. It's whether you can bow your head, even when your ego wants to rise. I want to ask you a simple question. If you were to measure your spiritual growth not by how much you know, but by how you treat your parents, what would that reveal? For some, this question might stir discomfort. Maybe your relationship with your parents is complicated. Maybe there are old wounds. But even then, caring for them can become a practice of forgiveness, of letting go, of softening the heart. You don't have to erase the past. You don't have to pretend everything was perfect. But you can still choose compassion in the present. And that choice transforms you, regardless of the past. In truth, our parents give us a unique chance to practice because they awaken such strong emotions in us. That intensity is not a barrier to practice. It is the very ground of practice. Where else will we find such a powerful opportunity to transform irritation into patience, duty into love, and habit into mindfulness? So no, you don't need to go to a temple to practice. Your home can be your temple. Your parents can be your teachers. Your daily acts of care can be your meditation. When you begin to see it this way, even the smallest actions gain new meaning. Washing the dishes after dinner, helping your mother walk across the room, listening to your father's stories for the 10th time, these are no longer chores. They are sacred rituals of love. And maybe this is what spiritual maturity really looks like, the ability to recognize wholeness in the ordinary, the ability to turn daily life into a path of awakening. So the next time you wonder if you are practicing enough, if you are doing real spiritual work, pause and ask yourself, how am I caring for the people who cared for me? Because in the end, it's not about how far you travel, but how deeply you love. And that's the invitation, to see that caring for your parents is not a burden, but a blessing. Not just duty, but practice. Not just family life, but spiritual life. In the next part of this series, we will explore how filial care doesn't just bring blessings, but also awakens wisdom, how serving our parents becomes a way to cultivate both compassion and clarity in our own hearts. Filial piety, cultivating both blessing and wisdom. Have you ever wondered why some people, the ones who genuinely care for their parents, seem to live with a kind of light around them, a quiet fortune, a clarity in their eyes, and a peace that follows them wherever they go? The Buddha once taught that caring for our parents doesn't just bring blessings. It also opens the door to wisdom. And when you think about it, that makes perfect sense. Because when we serve those who gave us life, we soften our hearts, and in that softness, understanding is born. Let's pause here. Why is it that caring for parents creates both blessing and wisdom? On the surface, it's easy to see the blessing part. In almost every culture, we admire those who honor their parents. A child who is respectful and caring often finds themselves supported by others, trusted more deeply, and given opportunities. People sense their kindness and naturally want to help them. That is blessing in action. But wisdom, that's a little more subtle. Wisdom doesn't come from memorizing scriptures or collecting degrees. It arises when the heart learns how to listen, how to let go, how to see clearly. And where do we practice these things most intensely? Very often, in the simple yet profound work of caring for our parents. Think about it. To care for aging parents, you must learn patience. You must slow down to match their pace. You must listen, sometimes to the same stories over and over again. You must put aside your own urgency to attend to their needs. That process, if done with awareness, is like polishing the mirror of your mind. You begin to notice your own reactions, your irritations, your attachments, and you begin to soften them. Little by little, wisdom dawns. I remember a friend telling me, taking care of my father in his final years was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also when I grew up the most. She explained how, before that, she thought she was patient, she thought she was strong. But when faced with her father's fragility, his forgetfulness, his stubbornness, his dependence, she was forced to confront her own limits. And by confronting them, she discovered new depths of love and new clarity about what truly matters in life. That's wisdom born from filial care. It's almost like life itself designed this relationship to shape us. When we were young, our parents cared for us. They softened their schedules, sacrificed their comfort, and gave us their strength. Now, as they grow older, we are given the chance to reverse the roles. And in doing so, we are offered a sacred training to become more compassionate, more mindful, and more wise. So, filial piety is not just a duty. It's a path. It gives us blessings because love always attracts love. And it gives us wisdom because love, when practiced with mindfulness, clears away our selfishness and sharpens our insight. Here's something else to reflect on. The people who are truly wise are never hard-hearted. They may be sharp in intellect, but their wisdom always comes with gentleness, humility, and care. That kind of wisdom doesn't come from books. It comes from real relationships, from serving, from understanding others' needs. And there is no more intimate training ground than in serving your parents. Ask yourself, how many times in life do we get the chance to practice unconditional giving? In most relationships, we expect something in return: recognition, love, reciprocity. But with parents, especially as they age, we often give without expectation. That act of giving shapes not only our character but also our clarity. It teaches us the deep truth that joy is not in taking, but in offering. And here's the paradox. When you serve your parents selflessly, without calculation, you often receive even more in return. Not always in money or possessions, but in peace, in inner strength, in the quiet blessing that seems to protect your steps. Some call it karma, some call it grace, some call it the law of life, but it's there. Let's also consider the generational ripple. When your children watch you care for your parents, they learn by example. You don't have to lecture them about respect. They see it lived in your actions. And that example plants seeds. Seeds that will one day bloom when they care for you, and seeds that will continue even beyond, shaping the culture of your family for generations. That is the blessing multiplied. But what about wisdom multiplied? When you soften your heart toward your parents, you also soften your perspective toward the world. You stop demanding that everything bend to your pace. You stop clinging to the illusion that life should always be smooth and convenient. You begin to see the deeper truth, that life is fragile, time is short, and love is what matters most. That clarity, that sobering but liberating realization, is wisdom. So yes, caring for parents brings blessings, respect, support, love, and unseen protection. But it also brings wisdom, patience, clarity, humility, and a deeper understanding of life itself. Together, blessing and wisdom are like two wings. With them, your life doesn't just move forward, it rises. I want to leave you with a question. If you knew that every small act of care for your parents was polishing both your fortune and your wisdom, how would you approach those moments differently? Would you still see them as chores, or would you see them as sacred opportunities? Because that's really what filial care is, a sacred opportunity. An opportunity to grow in love, to grow in clarity, to grow in humanity. In the next part of this series, we will explore how caring for our parents goes beyond the material. That true filial piety is not just about providing food or money, but about nourishing their hearts, their spirit, and their sense of peace. Filial care is more than food and clothing. Let me ask you something. What do parents truly need most in their old age? Is it money? Clothes? A comfortable house? Of course, those things matter. Food fills the body, clothing keeps us warm, and money provides security. But if you've ever sat with an elderly parent or grandparent, you know the truth. What they long for most isn't material comfort. It's presence. It's kindness. It's the simple reassurance that they are not forgotten, not left behind in the busyness of our modern lives. The Buddha once taught that offering care to parents is one of the highest forms of merit. But that care isn't measured only in what we buy for them. It's measured in the love, patience, and presence we bring into their lives. Think of it this way. When you were small, did your parents love you only by giving you food and clothes? No. They sang you to sleep. They held you when you were scared. They listened, even if your words were nonsense. They made you feel safe. That was the essence of their love. And now, as they grow older, what they need from us is that same essence: reassurance, tenderness, and connection. I remember hearing a story about a man who sent his mother expensive gifts every holiday. Jewelry, clothes, even a new car. But when she was interviewed later, do you know what she said? I don't need more things. I just wish he had time to have tea with me, to sit and listen to my stories. That breaks your heart, doesn't it? Because it reveals something we all know deep down. Love cannot be replaced with things. A gift without presence feels empty. But even the smallest gesture, offered with true attention, can mean the world. So, when we talk about filial piety, or Hayu HNH as it's called in Buddhism, we must remember, it is not just about feeding the body of our parents. It is about nourishing their hearts. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat with your parents without rushing? When was the last time you really looked into their eyes and listened, not just with your ears, but with your heart. The truth is, as people age, loneliness often weighs heavier than hunger. Studies show that loneliness can be as damaging to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. Your presence, your voice, your listening, these are not small things. They are medicine. They are life-giving. And here's another perspective. When we fail to offer this presence now, we may later regret it deeply. I've met many people who, after their parents passed, said the same thing. I wish I had spent more time. I wish I had said more kind words. I thought there would be more time. The harsh truth is, there is never as much time as we think. But here's the beautiful part. It doesn't take much to make a parent feel loved. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need grand gestures. Sometimes it's as simple as a phone call, a shared meal, a walk in the park, or even just sitting silently beside them. For parents, those moments are treasures. Filial piety, then, is not about duty in the cold sense of the word. It is about remembering that love is lived in the little things. A gentle word, a warm hand, a patient ear. These are the gifts that money cannot buy. Let's bring it closer. Imagine your mother or father in their old age. Imagine them waiting by the window, hoping you'll come visit. Imagine the light in their eyes when they hear your footsteps at the door. No amount of money in the world can replace that joy. And here's something profound. When you give that joy, you also receive it. Love is never one way. When you show up for your parents, you deepen your own humanity. You remind yourself of what really matters in life. You create memories that will sustain you long after they are gone. So, when we talk about nourishing our parents, it's not just about the body. It's about nourishing their spirit. It's about giving them the peace of knowing they are loved, respected, and cherished. This is the real meaning of Hayu DNG, filial care. It is care that embraces both body and soul. And maybe the question we should carry with us is this: am I giving my parents what they truly need, or only what is convenient for me to give? Because sometimes, the most meaningful gift is not expensive. It is simply our attention. And in this distracted world, true attention is the rarest and most precious gift of all. As we close this part, let's remember, food and clothing may keep our parents alive, but presence and love are what truly make life worth living for them. In the next part of this series, we'll explore something very special: how even our words, the tone we use, the kindness we express, can be a form of filial piety. Because yes, Hayu HNH is not only in what we do, but in how we speak. Filial piety in words. Let me ask you something. Do you believe that a single word can bring blessings, or create suffering? It might sound exaggerated, but think about it. Words can heal. Words can also wound. A kind phrase can lift someone's spirit for the whole day, while a harsh one can leave a scar that lingers for years. And when it comes to our parents, the people who gave us life, every word we say carries even more weight. The Buddha once said that gentle, loving speech is like a lotus blooming in a home. It transforms the atmosphere. It turns an ordinary house into a sanctuary of peace. But the opposite is also true. Harsh or careless words, especially toward our parents, can turn even the most comfortable home into a place of tension and sorrow. Think about this. How many times in our busy, stressful lives do we snap at our parents without realizing it? Maybe they repeat a story we've heard 100 times. Maybe they ask us a question we think is too simple. And in that moment, our impatience bursts out. We roll our eyes. We raise our voice. We say something sharp. It happens so fast we barely notice it. But for them, those words cut deep. Because underneath, what they hear is, "You don't matter. You're a burden. I don't have time for you." Even if we don't mean it, that is often how it feels. Now, here's the paradox. Our parents can endure poverty, hunger, and hard labor for our sake. They did it for years while raising us. But many parents confess that what hurts them most is not physical struggle. It's the coldness or harshness of their children's words. I remember meeting an elderly woman who said, "I don't need my children to buy me anything. I just wish they would talk to me kindly, without rushing, without anger. That alone would be enough." Isn't that striking? A kind word, something that costs us nothing, can be the most precious gift. And it goes deeper. According to Buddhist wisdom, every word we speak plants a seed. A harsh word plants bitterness. A gentle word plants harmony. And just as seeds grow into trees, these words grow into the environment we live in. Speak with anger, and we'll live in an atmosphere of anger. Speak with kindness, and we'll live in an atmosphere of warmth. So here's the question for all of us. What kind of garden are we planting in our own homes? If we reflect honestly, many of us invest so much effort in providing materially for our parents, buying gifts, paying bills, arranging medical care. And yet, sometimes we neglect the simplest and most important offering, a gentle voice, a calm presence, words that bring comfort instead of stress. In fact, the Buddha taught that speaking kindly to our parents is not just good manners. It is merit. It creates blessings for us and for future generations. Why? Because when we speak with respect and tenderness, we are aligning ourselves with compassion itself. We are embodying the very qualities that make a human life meaningful. Let's make this even more concrete. Imagine two scenarios. In the first, your father asks you the same question again, maybe something about your work or about how to use his phone. You feel annoyed, and you snap, "I already told you. Why can't you remember?" He goes silent. The room grows heavy. Inside, he feels ashamed and small. In the second scenario, the same situation happens. But instead, you smile and say gently, "Yes, Dad, let me show you again. Don't worry, take your time." His face relaxes. The room feels lighter. He feels safe, respected, cared for. The difference between those two outcomes was not money. It wasn't effort. It was just words. And here's something to think about. The way we speak to our parents often shapes how we will be spoken to later in life. Children watch, absorb, and imitate. If they see us snapping at our parents, they may one day treat us the same way. But if they see us speaking with kindness, they will learn to do the same. In this way, kind speech doesn't just bless our parents, it becomes a legacy of compassion for future generations. Now, of course, none of us are perfect. We get tired, stressed, overwhelmed. It's natural to lose patience sometimes. But every day gives us new chances. Even a single soft word can repair days of silence. Even a single apology, "Mom, I'm sorry I spoke harshly earlier. I do love you," can melt years of distance. That's the power of speech. So maybe we should pause here and ask ourselves, what if, starting today, we treated every word spoken to our parents as a seed? Would we choose those words more carefully? Would we plant more flowers and fewer thorns? Because in the end, words don't disappear. They live in the hearts of those who hear them. They echo in their memories. And for parents, whose hearts are often more tender than they show, our words can either be blessings or wounds. So, let us remember, every sentence we say to our parents is a chance to practice filial piety, a chance to give them peace, a chance to create merit for ourselves. And the beautiful truth is, this practice doesn't require wealth or status. Anyone can do it. You don't need a special education. You don't need money. All you need is awareness, patience, and a willingness to choose gentleness. Because filial care is not just about food and clothing. It's not just about presents. It's also about the quality of our speech. A kind word can be like sunlight warming the heart. A harsh word can be like ice freezing it. Which one do we want to give? As we close this reflection, let's carry one simple thought. Every word to our parents is a seed. Choose wisely, and you will harvest harmony, love, and blessings. And in the next part of this series, we'll look at something equally powerful, how even the smallest daily actions, the little gestures we often overlook, can become profound expressions of filial piety. Filial piety in everyday actions. Let me ask you something. Do you think filial piety, honoring and caring for our parents, always has to be something grand? Like buying them a house, sending them on an expensive trip, or sacrificing huge parts of our lives? What if I told you that sometimes filial piety is as simple as a glass of water? As simple as holding their hand? Yes, a glass of water. A steady hand on the staircase. A warm blanket pulled up at night. These little gestures may seem small, almost insignificant in the rush of daily life. But for our parents, they can mean the world. The Buddha once taught that serving and caring for one's parents is one of the highest forms of practice, no different than worship in a temple. And here's the beautiful part. That practice isn't reserved for monks or for special occasions. It's available to us every single day, right in our own homes, through the most ordinary of actions. Think about it. When you pour a cup of tea for your mother without her asking, it's not just a drink. It's a message. I see you. I care for you. When you gently hold your father's arm as he walks, it's not just support. It's a message: I won't let you fall. I am here. We often underestimate these simple things. Maybe because they don't look impressive on the outside. No one's going to applaud you for sitting with your mom during her doctor's appointment, or for trimming your dad's nails. But these are exactly the moments where love takes physical form. These are the quiet acts where devotion shows itself most clearly. I remember once visiting a friend's home. His father was old, his hands trembling. My friend, without saying a word, patiently spoon-fed him soup. The room was silent, except for the clinking of the spoon. There was no speech, no lecture, no ceremony, but in that small act, I felt something holy. It was like witnessing prayer in motion. And isn't that the point? True filial piety isn't about dramatic sacrifices. It's about the heart behind small deeds. It's about showing up, consistently, in ways that tell our parents, you're not alone. Here's a question worth reflecting on. How many opportunities have we missed simply because we thought we were too busy? Too busy to sit for a meal. Too busy to walk together. Too busy to listen to a story we've heard before. We chase big accomplishments, while the real treasure, the chance to serve in small ways, slips quietly through our fingers. The irony is, later in life, we often remember these small moments the most. Not the expensive gifts. Not the flashy events. But the little, ordinary gestures. The tea. The hand on the shoulder. The ride to the hospital. And here's another perspective. In caring for our parents through daily acts, we are also training ourselves. Every time we practice patience while helping them, we are polishing our own hearts. Every time we serve them without complaint, we are cultivating humility. Every time we sit and listen with full attention, we are strengthening compassion. These aren't just actions, they're exercises in character. So yes, a glass of water can be filial piety. A hand extended down the stairs can be a prayer. A warm word spoken before bed can be a blessing. The question is, do we recognize their value, or do we dismiss them as too small? Maybe the truth is this: love is always in the details. Not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet constancy of everyday care. So the next time you walk past your parents' room, pause. Ask if they need anything. The next time you pour yourself a drink, pour them one too. When they speak, listen, even if you've heard it before. These are the threads that weave the fabric of true filial piety. And here's something worth remembering. There will come a day when we will long to do these things, but won't have the chance anymore. A day when the chair at the dinner table is empty. A day when the voice we use to find repetitive is gone forever. On that day, we will realize the little things were never little. They were everything. So don't wait for tomorrow. Practice filial piety now, in the small, quiet moments of today. Because those moments are sacred. They carry weight far beyond what we can see. As we close this reflection, let's carry this truth. Filial piety is not measured by grandeur. It is measured by sincerity. And sincerity shines brightest in the little acts of daily life. And in the next part of this series, we'll explore something even more powerful: how our way of honoring our parents becomes a living example, a mirror, for our own children, and for generations to come. Filial piety, a living example for the next generation. Let me ask you this: where do children truly learn about love, respect, and duty? Is it from the words we tell them, or from the lives we show them? Think back to your own childhood. Did you learn kindness because someone gave you a lecture on kindness? Or was it because you saw your parents helping a neighbor, or comforting someone in pain? The truth is simple. Children don't just listen, they absorb. They copy. They mirror. They learn not from what we say, but from what we do. And this is where filial piety, honoring and caring for our parents, becomes much bigger than just a personal act of love. It becomes a legacy, a teaching tool, a mirror for the next generation. Imagine this. You sit down at the dinner table with your kids. Your aging father joins, his steps slow, his hands a little shaky. You rise instinctively, steady him by the arm, and help him sit. You don't say a word about duty or gratitude. You don't give your children a lecture about respecting elders. But they see it. They feel it. And in that silent act, a seed is planted. Later, when life comes full circle and you are the one with slower steps, what do you think your children will remember? They will remember the way you treated your parents. And chances are, they will do the same for you. The Buddha often emphasized that filial piety is not just about personal virtue, it creates ripples across generations. When one person shows devotion to their parents, that action becomes a model, a story, a living scripture for those who watch. I remember a friend telling me about his childhood. He said, "I never forgot the way my mother cared for my grandmother. She would bathe her, feed her, and sit by her side every night. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But now that my mother is older, I find myself doing the exact same things for her, naturally, without being told. Because that's what love looked like to me." Isn't that powerful? Filial piety is not just something we do for the present. It's something we transmit into the future. And here's a question worth reflecting on. What kind of example are we setting right now? If our children only had our actions to learn from, what would they take away? Would they see patience, gratitude, compassion? Or would they see neglect, avoidance, and indifference? It's easy to underestimate the power of example. We might think, oh, kids don't notice. They're too young, too distracted. But they notice more than we realize. They're watching the way we speak to our parents. They're listening to whether our tone is gentle or harsh. They're observing whether we make time for family, or whether we are always too busy. Every choice we make is a silent lesson. Every gesture is a seed. And remember, this isn't just about family. It's about culture. Societies where filial piety is strong are societies where compassion and respect flow naturally. When the home is filled with love across generations, that love spills into the community. Think about it. If a child grows up seeing their parents honor their grandparents, they learn not just how to care within the family, but how to respect elders in general, how to value human dignity. That shapes the way they treat teachers, mentors, even strangers on the street. So filial piety isn't just private virtue. It's public wisdom. It's the root of social harmony. And here's the beauty. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to stage anything dramatic. Even small, consistent acts matter. Picking up the phone to call your mom. Bringing your dad his favorite snack. Speaking kindly instead of impatiently. Your children will notice these things, even if they don't mention them. And years later, they'll repeat them, not because you told them to, but because you live them. Let's pause here. What kind of seeds do you want to plant? Because one day, all of us will grow old. One day, we'll long for tenderness, for companionship, for that steady hand on the stairs. And on that day, the way we treated our parents will return to us, reflected in the way our children treat us. So filial piety is not only a gift we give backward, to those who gave us life. It's also a gift we give forward, to the future. It's a circle. What goes out, comes back. What we sow in one generation, we reap in the next. That's why the practice of honoring our parents is never wasted. It nourishes them. It shapes us. And it guides those who come after us. So the next time you serve your parents a meal, or listen to their stories, or simply sit by their side, remember, you're not just caring for them. You're teaching your children what love looks like. You're writing the script of how love will be carried on long after you're gone. And in the next part of this journey, we'll explore something deeply connected, the link between filial piety and karma, how the way we honor or neglect our parents weaves directly into the fabric of our own destiny. Filial piety and karma. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some people's lives seem smooth and fortunate, while others constantly face obstacles, no matter how hard they try? Is it simply luck? Or is there something deeper at play? In Buddhist teaching, this is the realm of karma, the law of cause and effect. Our actions, big or small, plant seeds. Over time, those seeds blossom into the circumstances of our lives. And one of the most powerful seeds we can plant, for good or for harm, is how we treat our parents. It may sound surprising. Why would the way I speak to my mother, or care for my father, affect my career, my health, or my relationships? But if you think about it, it makes sense. Parents are the very root of our existence. To harm the root is to disturb the entire tree. To nurture the root is to let the tree flourish. The Buddha was clear. Neglecting or mistreating our parents is one of the gravest karmic mistakes a person can make. It creates heavy energy, what we might call bad karma, that follows a person through life, making their path rough, filled with hardship. On the other hand, serving our parents with gratitude and devotion is among the greatest virtues. It dissolves negative karma, brings blessings, and opens doors where we once saw only walls. Think about it in everyday terms. Imagine someone who is impatient, harsh, or dismissive toward their parents. Do you think that attitude ends at the front door? Of course not. That same impatience and disrespect will leak into their workplace, their friendships, even their marriage. Over time, life pushes back, conflicts rise, opportunities close, relationships break. That's karma unfolding. Now imagine the opposite. Someone who cares tenderly for their aging parents, making time to call, to visit, to listen. This habit of patience, compassion, and respect doesn't just stay at home. It strengthens their character everywhere. They become more trustworthy at work, more loving with their spouse, more patient with their children. Life responds in kind, doors open, help arrives when it's needed, blessings multiply. That too is karma. I once heard a story about a young man who spent years struggling to get ahead. No matter what job he tried, things seemed to fall apart. Frustrated, he went to see a teacher. The teacher didn't ask about his resume or his education. Instead, he asked, "How do you treat your parents?" The young man admitted he often ignored them, even snapped at them. The teacher smiled gently and said, "Go home. Start with that. Call them. Care for them. Serve them as best as you can. Then watch how your life changes." Skeptical but desperate, the young man tried. At first it felt awkward. But slowly, his heart softened. He cooked for his parents, took them to the doctor, listened without rushing. Within a year, opportunities began to appear out of nowhere. His work improved, his relationship steadied, his health even felt lighter. He realized his life outside had shifted because he had healed something at the root. That's the mystery, and the clarity, of karma. It's not superstition. It's simply cause and effect. The energy we bring to our parents, the ones who gave us life, echoes into everything else we touch. And perhaps this is the deepest truth. Filial piety is not just a moral duty. It is a path of transformation, a way to cleanse past negativity, to lighten the burdens we carry, and to open the way forward. So, if you've been facing hardship after hardship, ask yourself honestly, how have I been treating my parents? Have I been patient, grateful, caring? Or have I been distant, dismissive, even resentful? Sometimes the very key we are searching for, the way to change our luck, lies in something as close and simple as the relationship with those who raised us. Now, let me be clear. Not all parents are easy. Some of us carry wounds from childhood, scars that make showing gratitude difficult. But even in those situations, filial piety doesn't mean blind obedience or pretending the past didn't hurt. It can mean forgiveness. It can mean choosing not to carry bitterness. It can mean offering respect in the ways we are able, without hatred. That too creates powerful karma, the karma of healing. So ask yourself, if my life is the fruit, how am I treating the root? Filial piety isn't just about family harmony. It is, in the deepest sense, a way of reshaping destiny. A way of turning the wheel of karma in a brighter direction. And that's the message for today. Honoring our parents is one of the surest ways to transform our karma. It softens the obstacles, strengthens the blessings, and brings peace to the heart. In the next, and final, part of this journey, we will talk about the highest form of filial piety, not just caring for our parents as individuals, but embracing filial love as a bodhisattva path, a love wide enough to embrace all beings. Filial piety, the path of the bodhisattva. Let me begin with a question. Did you know that when a person practices true filial piety, they are already walking on the path of a bodhisattva? It may sound lofty, even mysterious, but in reality, it's deeply practical. The Buddha once taught that among all virtues, filial piety stands at the very top. Why? Because before we can talk about saving the world, we must first know how to love, honor, and care for the ones who gave us life. Think about it. A bodhisattva is someone who vows to relieve suffering and bring joy to all beings. But who are the beings closest to us? Who suffers most when we turn away? And who feels the deepest joy when we are present? It's our parents. To serve and cherish them is not a small thing. It is the very training ground of compassion, the first step into the boundless heart of the bodhisattva. Some people imagine the bodhisattva path as something far away, meditating in caves, saving distant strangers, performing miracles. But Buddhism reminds us, the path starts right here, in the ordinary. When you bring your mother a glass of water, when you massage your father's tired shoulders, when you listen patiently instead of arguing, in those moments, you are embodying the bodhisattva's vow. You are relieving suffering and planting joy. Let me share a reflection. I once met a woman who told me she wanted to devote herself to spiritual practice, but she felt torn. Her elderly parents needed her daily care, and she thought this responsibility was keeping her away from real practice. A teacher told her gently, "Caring for your parents is your practice. Every meal you prepare, every night you stay by their side, every sacrifice you make with love, these are not obstacles. They are the very essence of the Bodhisattva way." That struck me deeply. We often chase after the extraordinary, thinking spirituality must look grand. But the highest truths hide in the simplest gestures. Ask yourself, if we cannot love and care for those closest to us, the very people who brought us into this world, how can we truly claim to love humanity or to want to save all beings? Filial piety is the root from which universal compassion grows. Without the root, the tree cannot stand. And here's another dimension. Filial love doesn't stop with our biological parents. As our heart expands, we begin to see that every elder, every being who has nurtured us, is worthy of our gratitude. In this way, the circle widens, from parents, to family, to community, to all sentient beings. That is the Bodhisattva's love, but it starts at home. You might ask, but what if my parents were not kind? What if I carry pain from them? That's real, and it cannot be ignored. But here too, the Bodhisattva path offers a doorway. Filial piety doesn't always mean agreement, and it doesn't erase the past. Sometimes, it simply means choosing not to repay hurt with hurt. It means offering forgiveness where we can, respect where it's possible, and refraining from bitterness. Even this is a powerful act of compassion, freeing not only our parents, but ourselves. In this sense, filial piety is not blind obedience. It is conscious love, love that heals, love that expands, love that transforms karma. Let's pause for a moment and look deeper. Why did the Buddha place filial piety above so many other virtues? Because when we serve our parents, we are practicing gratitude in its purest form. Gratitude is the soil in which wisdom and compassion grow. Without gratitude, even spiritual practice can become dry, self-centered, a search for personal escape. With gratitude, every act, even washing dishes, even sitting quietly with an aging parent, becomes luminous, filled with meaning. So perhaps we can say, filial piety is the first bodhisattva vow we ever take, whether we realize it or not. It is our entry into a life lived not just for ourselves, but for the well-being of others. Let me bring this home with one more thought. Modern life moves fast. We chase careers, ambitions, personal dreams. And there's nothing wrong with that. But pause for a moment and ask, when the end of life comes, what will shine most brightly in your heart? The awards on your wall? The promotions you earned? Or the memory of holding your mother's hand, of hearing your father's laughter, of knowing you did your best to care for them? The truth is, caring for our parents is not a burden. It is a privilege. It is one of the greatest blessings life can give us, a chance to repay, in some small way, the immeasurable gift we have received. And that's why I say, when you practice filial piety, you are already walking the Bodhisattva's path. You are cultivating compassion, deepening gratitude, and creating blessings that ripple far beyond your family, blessings that touch the whole of life. So here is today's closing message. Caring for our parents is not just a family duty, it is the highest spiritual practice, the greatest fortune, the purest Bodhisattva path. And in the next video, we'll take a step further and explore a practice that may sound small but holds immense power. Kind words, the key to unlocking happiness.